Why can't the real world be as clear and peaceful as my own mind?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another DualShockers discussion slash preview. Today, I am here, babyface Nick Blaine. Got just shaved, so you know now we're actually the babyface. But to my right, I guess, that's the left. That was the left. Is DualShockers' own author extraordinaire and David Lynch enthusiast, Mario Rivera, and you played one Twin Mirror.
That's right. I have got the opportunity to play Twin Mirror. Oh, hold on. I flipped your camera upside down. 1 second.
Whoa!
Oh, no. Hold on. Let me go ahead and fix you back. Oh, it is. Messing up. Cancel. There we go. You're back.
Whoa!
I was trying to reflect your image, not so much straight up flip you over. Or Mirror World. Yeah. So I got to play Dontnod's latest, which is funny because I feel like they just released a game not that long ago, obviously with Tell Me Why, which I've got to play a lot of as well. And it is a Dontnod game, and I'm excited to talk about it with you. So if you have questions,
I'm excited to hear about it.
I have answers.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear about it because I just got done a couple of days ago with episode 3 or chapter 3, whatever they're calling it, I forget, of Tell Me Why.
Yeah.
And man, that game is like, they're really getting it. They're really starting to get it. As much as I love Life is Strange, the writing is not exactly like teens writing.
Sure.
You know, like you don't feel like you're actually teenagers. And then Life is Strange 2, like it really delves into some deep stuff. And then of course with Tell Me Why, tackling very hard issues, especially in current day. What's Twin Mirror? I guess I should preface that since we haven't had any sort of preview on it. What did you see from it? What's the story really?
So Twin Mirror, and I even say this in my preview that you can actually read. I actually did a written preview for this on DualShockers.com. So if you want to read my words, it is there. It's going to be also converted to a video. So by all means, you're going to get a lot of me talking about Twin Mirror. So, but to basically preface Twin Mirror, it's very much like a Dontnod game. There is a small town that is fictional. There is a protagonist that has an ability. Not far worn from the general formula. However, in this specific version of their beautiful formula, it's not necessary as of right now. As of where I've played, and I've only played about the first 2 hours of the game. It's not necessarily an ability, but it is something that is sort of like a visual representation of what is in the mind of the main character, because he's actually an investigative journalist, and so he uses sort of like this mind palace is what they refer to basically deduct and relive memories. So, for instance, he'll go into like the very beginning of the preview, which you could be able to see in the video that I'm going to show. He sort of like is overlooking the town, and then all of a sudden goes back, and then he sees memories of different places in the town, leading up to like sort of like this interesting like very Inception like mirror world that he enters. And what the big headline for this game is this is actually probably the Christopher Nolan game that people are looking for, and I know it sounds big praise, and I don't want people to think of like Interstellar Batman. I want them to think of like the following Memento Insomnia. And the reason I bring that up is because ultimately, yes, it is about a man who is who's left his hometown for 2 years, because he wrote an article that actually tore the town apart in terms of what their main resource is, which of course is it's a mining company. It's a mining town. Since that article had come in, mass layoffs and some turmoil have happened. So he's not very much well liked or welcomed. And of course, he's also pretty beaten up about it and some other things that have also happened. But ultimately, he's coming back because he's there's a death amongst his friends. His friend Nick, who who may or may not have died of mysterious circumstances, and basically the thrust of the story is to finding out what's going on in this small town and how are you might actually be implicated in something darker. For instance, the main character, and I believe we're cool to say this, wakes up, and it's in the trailer, so you can't miss it. He wakes up and his shirt is covered in blood, and he does not remember why. So
Okay.
he tries to reconnect and go back to Steps and basically try to figure out what's going on in this town, what happened to his friend, what does this have to do with himself, and of course, what the hell happened with the bloody shirt situation. And that's just the very beginning. So there's your premise. There's, murder mystery right there. Investigative journalism. Very much, and I would say, like, not, while I don't think, like, think of Life is Strange as a murder mystery show, as a murder mystery game, actually. But there's some still ties in there, and I feel like that's them returning to that a little bit in this one, while at the same time keeping with the cinematic. Like, it's interesting because their focus had been so, like, pinpointed to, like, teen girls in terms of what their situation is. And then, of course, you have Tell Me Why, which is sort of this relationship between these siblings and, trans issues and stuff like that. This is probably the most straightforward in terms of what they're doing. Now, I'm curious how the rest of the game will pan out, and that will actually bring forth, like, what else they have to offer. Because as of right now, I would say it's very straightforward. I am curious of how it's going to shake out for the rest of the game.
So with the straightforward elements, in previous, if you haven't played a Dontnod game before, anybody out there, in previous games, they do have a supernatural element to them. I know that there is one in this. How deep is it? Do we get like I know, like there's some things in like Tell Me Why that are like a little bit more like the supernatural elements you think are happening. How do they tackle that in this iteration?
Well, like I said, as of right now, I don't even necessarily think there is an actual supernatural thing. It's all seemingly placed inside the main character's head. Actually, here's something where it could potentially lead to it. Not only does the main character Sam Higgs have this thing called the Mind Palace, where he can like venture in and like recreate crime scenes and stuff like that, but he also has a double. He has a doppelganger.
Okay.
He has another person that it's like imaginary person in his mind that is like a more sophisticated version of him. I equated him to like looking like he's the Patrick Bateman version.
Okay.
Of Sam Higgs, where like he's got the suit on. For some reason, he's wearing gloves. He's got the slick back hair. He's got glasses, and you'll be able to see him in the preview. But ultimately, his motivation essentially is the more suave version of Sam Higgs. So he's the more socially conscious when it comes to the dialogue conversations with people. Like he's the one suggesting like, hey, maybe you really should do this because this will lead to that and that. Like he's sort of like a interesting, like a moral compass. So far, he hasn't been devious, which has so far been interesting because I'm very curious how much of a role that the double is going to end up playing. I think he's called the double. But ultimately, yeah, I'm very curious how that's going to play out. There is some interesting that happens in the Mind Palace that are separate from what Sam is comfortable with. Sam is comfortable with the actual mirror aspects of it and the learning of the, looking back at history moments. But then there's a moment, I believe I'm trying to remember what I can and cannot say. There is a moment in the Dream Palace where it just shatters and it's all dark and scary, and it looks very similar to like something you would see in like Control.
Okay.
I don't want to compare it too directly. Like I said, I don't necessarily think it's supernatural in any way.
But they give out those vibes.
They give out the vibes where
like.
I can compare like the look and feel of it. And there's something chasing you that's red. So yeah, again, I guess I can kind of compare it to it. You don't necessarily see what it is. I assume it has to do with some past trauma. And it's chasing you at this one section. And I wonder how much of that obviously is just built inside of the main character's mind and head versus, how it's going to go about. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think that it not necessarily having this is an interesting way to still tell this story without it being just boilerplate, like, I'm an investigative journalist and I'm going to find the clues on the ground. I think reconnecting and the way that I equated the Mind Palace, especially when it goes to like doing the investigation part, I equated it less like Batman art detective mode and more like Dominic Toretto in Fast and Furious 4, And the reason why I say that is because it's very similar. If you remember that film, when spoilers for Fast and Furious
How
4,
could you forget?
Dom Corretto is trying to recreate Letty's murder. And basically he like stands at the crime scene, and then like the thing just like flips over him and like goes through, if I'm not mistaken. And it's very similar, but obviously with like the glass mirror aesthetic. So that's why I equated it to that. That I think is what it's going to be the thrust of what makes this story interesting. But we'll see. I mean, I was hoping, and the reason why I was first drawn to this is I thought it was going to be more Twin Peaks. But like I said, I do heavily feel that it's more in that early Christopher Nolan murder mystery and time placement and mind management and stuff like that. More Insomnia, actually, if you've ever seen that film.
Yeah, the it kind of like, to me, I don't know if you've seen it, but the Sharp Objects, the HBO show that came out a couple of years ago with Amy Adams, it kind of sounds like loose threads of that, where she very much similar, where she is a journalist and wrote an article that about this town, and it comes back to this town because of another article that she has to write, and of course has to rekindle a relationship with her family, who is not very good to her, dig up all secrets of her past. So this has given me some great vibes, because I loved that show. It was so simple and clean, to keep with my Kingdom Hearts vibe, going on. But anyways, this is the first time that in a while that Dontnod has really tackled the full out game instead of an episodic game. How does that feel so far, when comparing like a Life is Strange? I know they did Vampire a couple of years ago, or maybe 2 years ago. Time is, again, I'm gonna say this, I feel like we say this throughout the year, but time is a flat circle. Yeah, so how do they tackle that and make it its own thing? And does it feel like not to say that Life is Strange doesn't feel like a full game, it does, but when you get it in those chunks, it feels like you're playing it as bite size. How do they tackle doing a full scale game again?
It's interesting when you compare it to, say, like the episodic ones, and I feel like Tell Me Why and Life is Strange they're, as much as they're similar, they are different of how they approach the different chapter breaks. I think that Tell Me Why, I think, tells actually significant chapter breaks more than I would say Life is Strange did, even though there are certain chapters that are like ends on a hell of a cliffhanger. I would say that it's interesting because I only got to play about 2 hours.
Okay.
And I would say not a lot has happened in those 2 hours, but in all fairness, I am so early in terms of like developing relationships and rekindling relationships in the story. So I'm so curious how that like expands, especially there is already an established history, and I'm also learning that, as well as learning I'm learning the past while learning the future. And it's just right as of right now, there's not enough, but I'm wondering obviously and I'm not sure how long this game will end up being. I assume this game can no longer be like maybe 13 to 9 hours, like it. I will, unless it's because so here's where the comparison, I feel like, and I wrote this a lot because I am a huge fan of these adventure games. I want it to be in the length of like Until Dawn, where I felt like that was the perfect long length for a solid game, and I actually don't even know how much the price of this game will be. I assume it's going to be a $60 title. I actually think. Yeah, I don't know if it has any partnerships. Does it have any partnerships?
I think it's on Game Pass. I'll look it up while you keep talking.
The only reason I say that I hesitate to say Game Pass only because Tell Me Why was. I thought that they would like separate that out. I could have swore I thought I saw this at a PlayStation conference. But even so, I would say that in terms of the game itself, I'm curious of like how much more this will unfold and how much I will learn with the different characters that they clearly want me to be introduced to, and how that's going to expand out and how long this ends up being. Because right now I've only experienced about maybe 2 days worth of story, and the days were not that long. So I am curious as to where it goes. I'm left on a cliffhanger of what's going to happen. So I'm curious how that goes. I don't think I can get into that section, but basically, I'm curious of where we will be connecting with the characters if it is a longer game, because I assume it has to be. My major caveat with this game, and the reason why I brought up Until Dawn and other adventure games, and even Life is Strange in a lot of ways, where I feel like Life is Strange only has a major choice at the end of the game, where you have to go left or right, even though I think there are choices throughout the game. But really the only major choice you need to know is the last one.
There's like relationship choices, like not relationship, but like just like how you interact with each person, but it doesn't really affect the overall until the end, obviously.
And I feel like I personally, that's my least favorite of these in terms of the way that these guys go about the games, go about making these games. And I'm curious because I haven't finished Tell Me Why just yet. I'm about in the middle of chapter 2, so I'm curious how that shakes out, if it's similar or anything like that. I actually didn't get a chance to play Life is Strange 2 yet, which
Life is Strange 2 is very good.
That's the one
That's also, I believe that's on Game Pass.
I believe that's on Game Pass, and I am once I finish Tell Me Why, because it was shorter, then I was gonna go jump on that one next.
Yeah, that one really hit the spot for me.
Yeah, I played Captain. Was it Captain Spirit? Yeah, I played that.
Yep.
Yeah, so I really like that as well.
Yeah, I think that Life is Strange 2 really has tackled the relationships at that point and who you interact with. It doesn't, again, it's not going to drastically, it doesn't ever drastically affect anything.
Yeah.
But I think that it does kind of, there's consequences in certain chapters that will kind of change the story. But I feel like the part with these stories is the fact that the relationships are what I really hold on to and what people really take part in. I mean, the biggest thing to come from Life is Strange, I mean, popular wise, is the spoilers ish for Life is Strange 1, but the relationship between Max and Chloe, I think that it's those strong character bonds that really bring it together that will make this game very strong or very fall flat. Well, and you did bring up earlier David Lynch, of course, and David Lynch very good at characters and townspeople and all that. How does the town feel? How do the characters feel themselves? Do they feel each unique, or is it just like hey, this is Bobby the bartender, this is mailman Frank,
And that's I think that's actually a good distinction of why like I said, I think it's more Christopher Nolan than Twin Peaks. It's primarily because I think that the town is not, as of right now, and I've only played I can talk about this. I only played there's a hub with different places that you can go to, and it's very small. So it's think of it in terms of like a Life is Strange, like in terms of like the courtyard, right?
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? But basically, yeah, they're characters, and they're all defined by their relationship with Sam Higgs from the previous time, and then there's some new characters as well. But primarily, they are like Declan the cop or Karen the pharmacist. So far, I haven't found my wacky characters yet, except for one specific person, only because she talks to me about pills for like her farting. It was weird. That was the one, but it's weird because all the characters are pretty straightforward and pretty normal, and then you meet this one person, and you're like, you're a little baddie. I don't know anybody like you in real life. But,
right.
But also, or like there's clearly like there's an interaction with Sam at a pharmacy with I don't want to say, I'm trying to use the not trying to use crackhead, but I'm trying to find another word that's similar.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, a person of non-well means, who just gross. But other than that's really it. I mean, obviously. There are some interesting things, like early on you're trying to find information and people want to talk to you about their problems, and you have the option to speed them up, and that affects your relationship with that person. That I realized because I ended up playing through the game about a couple times for the 2 hours, just because there's left and right choices.
Paragon and whatever hell the other one was.
Exactly, but they're not necessarily like evil choices, but they're pretty much like, do you run or do you stay quiet or do you stay? Like those are the primary
they're
choices.
not like morally bankrupt choices, but
not necessarily. Even though you could argue that they could be, and like one of them specific is like run away, right?
Yeah.
But the one thing I'm gonna finish up on what you brought up first, then I'm gonna talk about something else.
Okay.
In terms of the town people, I wish they were more defined. There are some people that I'm finding interest in, like for instance, Joe, who is the father of the love interest. I actually am interested in primarily because his character's tied to the mine in which you wrote about, and he actually, I think, was the inspiration for that article. So I find, but he's very much still loves the idea of the mine. So I find that interesting. But there are characters that I like not Joan. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna say Karen. Karen, the cafeteria person, not the cafeteria person, the cafe person that just doesn't talk about the thing that you directly ask her. She talks about something else, like something like that.
Bob the barista.
Bob the barista. There's a bunch of that right now, and honestly, I can take it or leave it. There's, because like I said, I'm a huge Twin Peaks fan. There's no like Ed and Lorraine, like woman with the eye patch. There's like Norma with like the giggling waitress. They don't have those fun, quirky stuff, which that's fine. I came in expecting that, ended up coming out with something totally different. That's okay too. But anyways, so yeah, I would say the townsfolks, I feel like as right now they're non-identifiable as just normal things, but otherwise they're there. There are obviously there are some key people that I feel like will follow through, and we'll see how that goes. In terms of when I was talking about like the choice-based stuff, that's to me is probably my biggest complaint, and that's why I kind of brought it up about the relationship stuff with Life is Strange, is because I want it to be more like, and maybe it's just because I want more Until Dawn games, but I want Until Dawn. I don't want Man of Medine or I just want Until Dawn. But their structure of how they did the branching, I found far more interesting, and I really want more of those because it's very much dialogue choice, make a big decision. But as I played through my 2 times going through, both decisions lead into the exact same scenario in the exact same place and exact same thing. No matter what you decide, it's just ultimately like, hey, are you a dick and you want to speed up a conversation with somebody and cut them off? Or do you want to hear them out and get more context and story? That to me seems to be the only real choice. And I would rather just be sort of like, well, if I go one way, I'm going to learn something different than I would go the other way. And personally, I don't think that's a present here. Like I said, I like literally there's a choice where it's like, hear them out or cut them off. Mm-hmm. If you cut them off, that interaction ends real fast and you don't get any more information. So I wish it had more dynamic choices. There's actually like a very false part where you see 3 mirrors and you go by the mirrors, and I'm going to show that in the video. You listen in and it has like key phrases of like, no, I stand my ground, find answers, like that. And then you go to another mirror and it says like, no, run away, they'll never find you, or whatever. And then you go to, well, on the first try, I got a mirror, and then the cutscene happened, and I progressed through the story. And I was like, because that was my choice. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm going to play more chaotically. I'm going to play the other way and see if anything different. And literally it's like, you picked that one, but that's not the mirror. Go find the right mirror. And I was like, that's...
So why is it even there, sort of thing?
Why are you presenting me with 3 choices when clearly you have one direct answer that you want me to go to? It's like, this is not a puzzle. It's just like... Yeah, so that to me is where I wish there were improvements on. And I'm curious, and again, I'll preface this, I don't know if I could say this, but ultimately in terms of like what I heard from developers was that while this is very early on in the game, the choices you make have greater rewards the later you play. And honestly, if you, like you said, in terms of like a at a Life is Strange game where it's the relationship buildings and how it feeds off into the end story, then absolutely. Okay, cool. I'm excited for that. Mm-hmm. But in terms of like those mechanics,
the minute to minute.
Yeah, where it's just like, it's funny because there's smart left and right choices. And then there's like the big, like, do you choose the doubles suggestion or do you want to go your way? So that I was wishing it was more fleshed out. Yeah. I do have another caveat, but I'll let you proceed if you have any more questions.
I just wanted to ask, how? So you compare it to more like a Nolan than a David Lynch sort of affair going on. So with the writing and the dialogue, how does it present it as more of like a like I don't know what to really compare it to, but like a LA noir or something like that, where it's like
No,
it is a. And the other thing I want to ask is a very important is how many times is the word hella used?
Sadly, not enough. If at all. I think this is a West Virginian town, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So there would.
Hey, I'm in Michigan. I use hella all the time.
No, fair enough.
I'm that guy.
No, for sure. Hella. Anyways. No. Sadly, there's no hella though. I hope there's like an Easter egg later. It's like
right.
There should be like on a T-shirt because I'm sure they made T-shirts or something like that, right?
Oh yeah. I know Life is Strange 2 they made T-shirts for.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say, yeah, sadly no. What was the first question? Sorry.
Basically, yeah. No, sorry. I know. I have a way to do that. You know, of just like, all right, here's my wacky. Here's my wacky dialogue as well. And segue to dialogue. How is the dialogue in it? Do you feel like there is distinct like character choices? Like you talked about how the choices of the actual like happening choices, I guess, would be the best way to put it. How does the character relationships feel with dialogue and the writing, and does it feel like it's contrived at all?
Yeah, in a way, like how a Fallout or say like a Mass Effect would handle it, depending on the choice that you choose. Obviously, there were Renegade and Paragon choices. You get different results, and I'm very curious if I played through it twice, and I'm still not completely sure. Because you could play it in two different ways primarily, is sympathetic, like want to reach out and be nice to everybody, or be like down on your luck and like, I don't know, I don't really miss this place, I'll be out of here soon. Like you can play it those different ways. But ultimately, yeah, I would say that the dialogue, in terms of the dialogue, it's pretty standard, like back and forth, nothing too jarring, which has been pretty good. So that's why I feel like it's not in the Twin Peaks or in the David Lynch of like 50s talk, or in terms of like quirky people have quirks to them. The only person, like I said, that has any quirks is that weird fart lady. But ultimately, I would say that it's honestly pretty straightforward drama. You know, in terms of like, I was looking for like a Twin Peaks. I probably got something on the Fox channel. Okay. You know, like I compared it to Bones, which is not Bones in like the content, but like the way that they talk to each other. Yeah. Just normal, you know, everyday talking. So nothing in my mind that is super dynamic with that. But I am interested to see, like, okay, like for instance, here's an example that I think I could say. Again, I'm like trying to like be mindful of everything. Oh yeah. There's a situation where, and I'm probably best to provide less context, but basically there's a situation where you can leave a room when someone's coming in and hear them out, like confront them, or you can leave and not them know at all. And no matter which one you pick, it just ends up in the same direction. Nothing changes really. It's just that you get a conversation, you get added dialogue, and you get to learn about a character if you go one way. But it's interesting because it's presented as like a dangerous choice. But yeah, I'm just curious how that goes around. But anyways, yeah, I would say that in terms of the dialogue, it's pretty straightforward. But ultimately, like I said, it's, do you want to be a dick? Do you not want to be a dick? Or do you have the social niceties of a normal human being? Or do you want to just rush through because, you know, you want to get direct answers, which it's understandable, I guess.
Yeah, I think that Dontnod, especially, like I think that with this, it sounds more like a bigger story than just, you know, like the couple of ones they recently did, like Life is Strange 2, which Life is Strange 2 does kind of, no spoilers, but kind of evolves into a bigger story, but is basically about these brothers really. And then of course Tell Me Why is much more of a tight knit, I feel like more of a you come back to this town and have that, you have distinct characters, but I think that they're not, I think probably they sound like they're probably more, they're more distinct than the ones in Twin Mirror. It's really interesting the fact that I think, don't get me quote me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first time that Dontnod has released 2 games in the same year, barring maybe Vampire,
Sure.
which is much more like a gamey game. And the other thing that I pulling back into Dontnod's history is the first time I remember hearing about them was Remember Me, and it kind of sounds like a similar mechanic system to Remember Me in terms of the mirror world. Is that a sound comparison? What do they do to kind of evolve on that sort of take, if it is?
Yeah, well, I'm interesting because obviously, Tell Me Why was I think a much shorter project,
Mm-hmm.
shorter story. Obviously, it's 3 parts. However, I think it probably will end up shaking out 9 hours. I am curious, like I said, even though I put it in the ballpark of potentially being 9 to 13 hours, I am wondering if it is a little bit more expansive. But it's interesting because there's a spectrum of games, right? There's the Dontnods, but then there's also like the David Cage,
Mm-hmm.
Heavy Rain stuff. And while this is not like Heavy Rain in any way, which I also feel like try to do Nolan, but in a worse way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see how with the longevity, how vast this project doesn't end up being. Only because I feel like it is a tried true thing of them being in the small town, so it's not global in any way. The town is most likely will not explode at the end.
Yeah.
At the end of
Yeah.
the show, it is going to be a more personal story, and it's primarily with Sam himself. So I'm very curious how that goes through. But yeah, I mean for what you're gonna get, I'm hoping it's in more terms of like the Insomnia, which if you haven't seen is a
Mm-hmm.
really great movie. It is really good actually,
Mm-hmm.
with Al Pacino and Robin Williams.
Probably.
And that
Yep.
duality of something that the main character does that they now have a relationship in some way, even though one of them is a murderer, like a legit murderer.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if that's going to play into this story. But yeah, I'm curious of what they have. In terms of scope, I hope it's pretty big.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was gonna pull back a little bit to when you were talking about the fact that the choices don't seem like super meaningful at this time. It's interesting, like, and this has been a criticism of games that have done a choice based system like Mass Effect and even more recently Assassin's Creed, that they don't seem to do anything besides like give you more information. And I think that before it was like, all right, what do you do? Now we're in a post Disco Elysium era where you had this game that literally gives you drastic changes to your character and everything while trying to tell a cohesive story. And I think, I mean, by all accounts, I haven't beat that game, but it sounds like they pulled it off quite well. And it's interesting to see them, like other people like Dontnod and to just trying to tackle that sort of try to figure out how do we deal with this. I mean, of course, Disco Elysium was a niche game, but I think that with the talk around it, I think it's a hard not to compare any of these games to, and to be like, hey, you can do this. Like, it's hard, but you can do this.
Like, I feel like that they have the potential to do this. I'm just wondering if this game will attempt that. And and if I had to be frank about it, I would say no. But I still enjoy these games no matter what. Like, the last one I think I majorly played, and even though I didn't really enjoy it as much, was it Detroit?
And Become Human.
Detroit Become
Human.
And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think I felt less satisfied. There are some interesting mechanics in that game, specifically when it comes to puzzle solving. And I actually didn't even bring up puzzle solving. Puzzle solving basically in this game is reenacting well, the first thing you do is you have to find everything in the room, and then link it. And then basically, once you find everything, it gets added to the clues, which you don't see what the clues are. You just click it. It says, oh, clue. Okay, clue. And then eventually you recreate these fight scenes or whatever the rest of the crimes end up being, and then basically that will put a picture in your mind of what happened. My major gripe with these puzzles is you just walk around a room, you find the thing, you walk into an area of the room and find one thing, right? But there's something else on the ground, but it's not clickable. But then you find the specific thing that triggers oh, I found the thing that allows you not even a cutscene really. It's a thing that's like, oh, this clearly indicates this thing. Then maybe I should look for more clues. And then I'm like, okay, you want me to keep looking around the same room in the same areas again?
That I've been looking at. That's a problem I had with Tell Me Why, where I feel like a lot of that was like, all right, where do we go? Oh, it's over here. It's specifically over here. Okay, let's go over here. But I was already over here. Why didn't you let me see this before?
That's annoying. And the fact that I had to do the area multiple times, and I've actually had to back out and go back in because I thought I broke the game.
Yeah.
But it ended up not being the case. Once I actually got the pattern of where you're supposed to collect the clues, then it gave me easier. Like, for instance, I can't say this part. But there's another puzzle later where I'm like, that really made me angry. But the early one where it's like in a bar, and then there's clearly something on the ground that I can't click on, but there's something.
But you know it.
But I know that's going to end up being something.
It breaks that immersion, really. Especially, I think that a lot of games really don't want to tackle oh, you can be a detective, let you do what you want to do. Rather than okay, this is the story we want to tell. Where I think that there's some games have the criticism of oh, well, this is a game this game made me tell the story that they wanted to tell. And I think that the problem that I do have with Dontnod games, and I love Dontnod games. Life is Strange 2 was one of my favorite games of last year. However, I think the problem that they have is they're trying to tell this story, this baked in story, and when now, especially in a post Disco Elysium world, you have it where why even give me the choice if you want to tell this story? I get why tell as many choices? Because I think that I get it with the relationships, because then it makes you care for these characters more, and it definitely did. And then there's a few in Life is Strange 2 that really I was like, okay, this drastically affects basically no spoilers, but some choices will get a character killed, that's something that I really liked. And I didn't see in Tell Me Why too much, but I don't think that it was needed, because it was such a smaller story. So I think. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was saying, to bring up what you said, Life is Strange, there's that clear moment early on in the game where if you did not look and find the information about something, you drastically changed the life of somebody in terms of them committing, suicide. Spoiler warning. Sorry about that. Should have put a spoiler tag. But yeah, that section, depending on what you do, is dependent on how you played that game. And I felt that was the most that game is very impactful in that way. I don't have that feeling when I play this one. So I'm curious how it shakes out with the later half, personally.
Yeah. It's interesting that trying to have all these choices when it's just I think it's disingenuous when you don't know about the world to be all right, here's and you don't care about this world more often at the start. I mean, you might, obviously it's a Dontnod game, the now that they're established studio, their quality and all that, so you're more apt to get invested. However, when you're just presented with this and you're you don't care about anything, it's hard to be okay, what's happening in this world before they already show you stuff. And I think that just giving you more information is a little bit not what we want to see. I think that it's more, okay, what is this character doing? How does this character feel about this? You know, I feel like that it's more, it feels more like exposition than it does actual character building and world building itself. So yeah, I'm looking very much forward to this game. That all being said, obviously I have my caveats. And when does this game come out?
I believe it comes out December 1st.
Okay.
Year. It's going to be on current gen consoles, not next gen. So it's going to be on Xbox, PC, and of course PS4, which you should be able to. There's no confirmation, but I assume you should be able to play these on your X. Yeah. So if you get the Series X or if you get the PS5, then by all means. I'm interested in this game when it comes out. You know, I really hope that I get the opportunity to see more of it early, or obviously when the game comes out. Sorry. Yeah. But ultimately, I want to see what kind of story they're telling, especially if it is this like Christopher Nolan way. Which it's funny because the reason why I keep bringing up these movies is because I've watched them this year, so they're fresh. Same. There fresh in my mind, and the reason is because they're kind of funny. So. Yeah, exactly. I don't think they can see that because of the blue bar.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
There you go. It's over there.
There you go.
So yeah, I'm excited to play. Like I said, what I feel like is maybe the Christopher Nolan game that people want. Obviously, again, caveat, not Interstellar. I'm talking about following.
Yeah, the smaller scope. Yeah, I think that, and the other thing is, it's so awesome to see the studio do the things that they do, and I think that they're getting so close to getting a perfected formula going, and I think that they've definitely, like, whereas Telltale, I feel like, kept stuck to one thing. I feel like they're definitely experimenting in a way that will improve them, and I think that they will pick up on the failures of Telltale, even though I do really enjoy those Telltale games. Batman is one of my favorite Batman stories of all time, and Walking Dead, you know. So yeah, I'm interested to see where the studio goes, and I'm especially with their efforts just this year, you know, seeing them improve on the writing just this year, and kind of even opening up like a trans stories, you know, and opening up these stories that aren't usually tackled, but it does seem like they are, with Twin Mirror, they are kind of going to a more straightforward thing, which I'm kind of disappointed in, but at the same time, like, I'm interested to see where
and who knows I mean, like I said, I only seen the first 2 hours. The one thing that maybe the game tackles is that there are interracial relationships, which I mean, I'm like, okay, what if that means anything going forward? I'm curious how that ends up spinning out. So
especially with the small town vibes.
Yeah, with the small town vibes, and the, you know, clearly people with I think one character referred to himself as a redneck, so I don't have to feel bad about saying that. But in terms of, like, I'm curious how that goes. But right now it seems very very clean PC, like. But I'm curious if there is deeper things the more you go along.
I think that something that they do very well is just tackling these hard issues and these issues that aren't really talked about. And the other thing that they do very well is just the interpersonal character stories. I think when they get super overarchy, like this is more like a David Cage, where it's telling overall story rather than the interpersonal story, I think it gets muddled a little bit.
Sure.
But I think this sounds like something that I'm going to be very interested in when it comes out in December. But thank you, Mario, for joining, or for telling me for telling me why I should play Twin Mirror. Haha.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Life's a lot strange right now, so it's really hard to.
I don't know. It's pretty Life is Strange too for me.
Man, I'm getting so tired these days. I need blood. I feel like a vampire. I don't know.
Man, it's just calm before the storm.
That's right. I really hope they can remember me after this podcast.
Okay, there we go. We rounded it all out. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Mario, where can they find you?
You can find me here doing other DualShocker videos if you're watching this at youtube.com/DualShockers. Obviously, if you want to hear more of my conversation and talks, I will be at twitter.com/ThatMarioRivera. And I'm also streaming now on twitch.tv/ThatMarioRivera, where you could subscribe and help me fund and buy me a new chair, because this chair that I'm sitting in really hurts my butt. So
It broke.
It broke.
It's not.
No, yeah, it broke during our meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great.
So,
Yeah, so enjoy that. Oh, and I'm talking about Bug Snacks soon,
talking about bug snacks.
so we'll see how about that. Yeah.
And then, of course, you can find me, of course, over here at DualShockers.com. You can find me at YouTube.com/ShockerMcPain, where I do my own stuff over there. And as well, you can follow me on Twitter. Thank you, Mario, for telling me about this preview. I can't wait to check it out. See you later, guys.